Ďakujem. So maybe you have not heard the term GNSS until now. Usually if people look at me strange when I say GNSS, I say, you know what GPS is? Yes, GPS is a part, but only a part, an insignificant part in the meantime, of GNSS. And I spelled it out for you, Global Navigation Satellite System. And my company also carries the same name with the same letters because that's my specialty. So I want to talk a bit about smart mobility and a little bit about not so smart mobility. So smartness means how you move, I think, when we talk about smart mobility. So how many of you came here using public transportation? Okay, not so bad. I will point out that I had a trick question to the host, and I said, if I were to come by car, how will I be reimbursed? And the answer was, you get the same amount of money as if you had taken the train. So that was a very good answer. So let's look at some examples of, for example, what is not smart? Something that maybe many of us know. This happens every day, all over the world, and it can't continue because we're going to basically spoil the planet, make it uninhabitable for our species to live on it, so we have to do something about it. You already see the nice smog starting early morning in this city because of the heavy traffic and industry. Here's an example of being smarter. I don't know if you've been to Taipei, but if you had seen cities like Taipei, almost everybody's on a scooter. Certainly much more effective than everybody having their own huge car. But you can go, of course, a step further. For example, in Tokyo, I was in Tokyo for a week about 5 years ago, and the amount of people that are just moving in public transportation is phenomenal. All very well disciplined, there's no pushing and shoving. And on the surface of Tokyo, on the streets, it's empty except for a few trucks delivering goods and a few electric vehicles as taxis. So they already figured it out. So if you ask me, I think the Japanese are very smart when it comes to mobility, but there are even smarter people. Oops, what happened now? Yeah, this is Copenhagen, where a majority of people go to and from work or school using bicycles, and it's not the most pleasant climate in Copenhagen. It often rains, it's often cold, sometimes snow, but they understand that's the best way to move around. So while we're always talking about technology, let's keep these things in mind as well. So in Slovakia, you have already been smart with mobility. You probably know about your nationwide tolling system, which was launched in 2010. So it was the first tolling system in Europe, or probably in the world, where not just the motorways were tolled, but also the normal roads, the major roads. And it's also the first time you had such onboard units that were just plug and play, you stuck in the windshield. No one had that until then. Slovaks were the first. I was involved in this project, so I know some details about it. And it was extremely accurate, 99% accuracy with the positioning from the moment of starting. And it took even less than a year to build. And it generates more than 1 million toll transactions a day. So there's a big IT system working on, in the background, which is working very well. And in 2014, Slovakia had the largest tolling system in Europe in terms of kilometers. And let me show you this, how it looked. This is how it looked in the beginning, from 2010 to 2013. And because Slovakia chose the satellite technology, which its neighbors did not choose, including my country of Austria, where they used microwave, look what they managed to do in 3 months. Pay attention. Come on. Yeah, oops, that was too fast. Yeah, so from here to here in 3 months. With satellite technology, this is possible. And the Slovak showed it, and it's a great story that I love talking about whenever I go talking about satellite technology in the world. I often use the Slovak example. Here's an example from one of your neighboring countries. Not quite so smart. And if you look here, you have diesel generators on the side of the road to power the gantry, to beam down the microwaves on the road. Doesn't look very safe either. Of course, after they installed this, they had a very short time frame. They had 8 months to get some gantries up, and then later they replaced them with stronger gantries. But now, Poland has announced that they're going to dump the microwave technology. They started their system after the Slovaks did their satellite system. And now, 10 years later, they've decided, oops, not a good choice. We're going to rip it down, and we're going to replace it with satellite. So, and this is how it looked, for example, in Poland. They had 1,500 kilometers of roads with those kind of gantries that you saw before. And after 30 months, they expanded it to this. So you can see quite a difference of when you choose the right technology, such as satellite, for projects like this. So let's look at Galileo. Galileo is the European GNSS. And here you see one of the satellites being launched on a Soyuz rocket. There was some problems with the Soyuz launches because when you get into the orbit, you have to be very precise. You're in the right orbit, and the Russians kind of blew it with 3 satellites. So that cost us some money, but nevertheless, this is your tax money at work. And I was initially very skeptical because I figured we can anyway use GPS. Why do we need Galileo? And now I understand why, and I hope you'll understand too at the end of my presentation. So here you see one of the satellites, or actually 2 satellites being released from the launcher. And we actually have 26 already in orbit, and full constellation will be ready next year. It's working now already 2 years, step by step, as more and more satellites are becoming active in the system. And by next year, 2020, it's going to be fully operational with full constellation. And lots of services that should interest you as well. So maybe you've seen these things. I didn't see any in Bratislava, but I was in Prague last week working for the European Commission, and these scooters are everywhere. And they all have a little box on the top, which is a GPS. It says GPS on it. Maybe it is just GPS, I don't know. I think it's a US company that's losing a lot of money on these things. So basically you can rent them and just leave it anywhere you want. So you have to find them. And how can you find it in an urban environment? It's not easy. That's why you need really good precision. So this is considered smart mobility, right? Because it's sort of sharing of devices, so it's sharing of scooters. And that's where smart mobility is. That's where our GNSS can contribute to smart mobility. And here's an example, because recently we had a project in Barcelona, and here we did a demo in Prague of a Horizon 2020 project, which used really the high precision of European Galileo satellite technology, so that people who rent scooters can actually find them. You know, they book it online, and they can really know exactly where the scooter is. You can imagine if there are tall buildings, there's not very good accuracy of the position. But with the European technology, we were able to solve that problem. And of course, also for the operators, it's much better to know exactly where your vehicles are. Probably the biggest move in the area of transportation is autonomous vehicles, as we heard before. And of all these components, all the sensors, satellite technology is actually a key. So the satellite navigation part is really crucial. And I have some images which I hope can help demonstrate that. So here we have a video of an autonomous vehicle. Well, of course, there's someone behind the wheel monitoring the situation, but basically this is an autonomous vehicle at work, and there's a lot of sensors that basically can keep track of where you're located. Imagine if there's snow on the road, or if there's very bad weather conditions, maybe heavy rain or something. It'll be much more difficult for the sensors to understand what's going on. That's why satellite is so critical, because you need to have a level of accuracy. Oops, why does it keep doing that to me? My other videos are not coming. Okay, that's a pity. Well, we had some nice, let me try going backwards again and see if you see that again. Yeah. Okay, there we go. So there was a Horizon 2020 project, for example, called InLane, where the vehicle actually can keep in the lane just based on its positioning information. Of course, you need the sensors as well, but if you have up to 10 centimeters discrepancy, that's enough to make sure you're in the right lane. And for such applications, you can imagine how critical that is. So the main point is that you save an awful lot of money. Of course, the sensors are important, but imagine how dramatic reduction in costs you have with the solution if you already have a positioning signal from Galileo, which is for free. You just need a very good receiver, and receivers were nowadays good ones you can get for less than 50 euros. So, we used to be dependent on GPS and on GLONASS, and these are the people in charge. Now, if one of them becomes unhappy with something in Europe, they can just not only turn off the signal, but they can alternate the signal. They can send a signal over Europe that makes you think you're 20 meters elsewhere than where you really are. That's why it's important that we have Galileo. This is who runs Galileo. Okay, and this is the lady from Poland who is the commissioner responsible for Galileo, which will maybe change in the near future after the elections. And you can see basically in the area of smart mobility all the different areas that can be affected by precise positioning from Galileo. And a very important point is the authentication service. So if someone wants to do something destructive or malicious, they could take the signal you receive and resend the signal with an offset that you think you're 20 meters or 30 meters to where you really are. And that would cause a lot of crashes if you're an autonomous vehicle, for example. With Galileo, we have an authentication service that it's not possible. If you receive a Galileo signal, your receiver knows very well that's the true signal that you have to listen to. And it's the first time on market, and it doesn't cost anything. So this is extremely important. So basically, my point is that time has come for Galileo. It's ready. It's working. It's working extremely well. And for those of you who do procurements, please be sure that Galileo is in your requirements. We have this system. We spent a lot of money on it. It's an excellent system. It took longer than we wanted, but we really have to use it. And now, in conclusion, I would like to point out to this young girl from Sweden who's 16-year-old and is making a lot of fuss and a lot of noise for good reason, because time is running out. If we don't do something within 11 years, the climate change is going to be out of control. So everybody really has to change their ways. She's in Austria today. That's a picture taken yesterday with Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's a conference, I think, in Salzburg. And think about what you're going to tell your kids and your grandkids before it all got really bad, what you did to help the situation. So move smart and maybe even eat smart, because eating and moving has a lot of effect of climate change. Thank you.